December 22, 2024. A Russian cargo ship begins to slow off the coast of Spain. The captain radios a simple message: mechanical failure, routine, nothing to worry about. 48 hours later, a Russian warship arrives. It doesn't offer assistance, it demands control of the area. Then it launches flares into the sky, bright enough to saturate infrared sensors on satellites passing overhead. Shortly after, Spanish maritime systems detect something unusual: underwater explosions, multiple detonations, and then silence. The cargo ship vanishes from the surface. It sinks 2,500 meters, roughly 8,000 feet, on Sagres into the Atlantic. Deep enough that almost nothing on Earth can reach it. But the warship doesn't leave. It patrols the exact coordinates for days. Then another Russian vessel arrives, one specifically designed for deep-sea recovery operations. For weeks, Moscow said nothing. Just an accident, just a lost ship, just bad luck. But Spanish investigators didn't believe it. They started digging, and what they uncovered is one of the darkest secrets of this entire war. That ship wasn't carrying empty cargo containers. It was transporting a nuclear reactor, the same type that powers Russia's attack submarines. And its destination wasn't a Russian port. It was heading toward North Korea. Russia didn't send a rescue team that night. They sent a warship to bury the evidence. And now, 8,000 feet below the Atlantic, sits proof of a deal that could reshape the balance of power in the Pacific for decades. But the reactor isn't even the most disturbing part of this story. What Russia was willing to trade, and in what it reveals about how desperate they've become, changes everything we thought we knew about this war. If you're fascinated by advanced engineering, global security, and the hidden technology that shapes our world, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling us what you think Russia's endgame really is. When the ship first ran into trouble, Russia's official story was clean. Simple, almost boring. Mechanical failure, empty cargo containers, a routine voyage between Russian ports, nothing classified, nothing sensitive, just an unfortunate accident in rough waters. It was the kind of story designed to make investigators lose interest, and for a few weeks, it almost worked. But Spanish authorities weren't tracking the ship because of the distress call. They were tracking it because of where it was going. Maritime surveillance systems had been monitoring the vessel for days before it slowed down. Its declared route made no sense. Its cargo manifest didn't add up, and its path was taking it suspiciously close to waters frequently used for covert transfers. So when the ship sank under unusual circumstances, and a Russian warship appeared within 48 hours. Investigators started looking closer. What they found blew apart everything Moscow had claimed. Satellite imagery, captured before the sinking, revealed something Russia never declared: 2 additional containers on the deck. These weren't standard shipping units. They had unusual dimensions, unusual thermal signatures, and they matched a very specific profile: VM-4SG nuclear reactor transport housings. The VM-4SG is not some obscure piece of equipment. It's one of the most critical components in Russia's submarine fleet, a compact pressurized water reactor designed specifically to power attack submarines and ballistic missile carriers. These reactors don't get shipped on random cargo vessels. They don't travel through international waters without heavy security. And they definitely don't get listed as empty containers on a cargo manifest. But the destination was what truly confirmed investigators' suspicions. The ship wasn't heading to Vladivostok, as some Russian sources initially claimed. Based on its trajectory and fuel load, analysts determined it was on a course toward North Korea. Russia wasn't just moving sensitive equipment. They were trying to deliver nuclear submarine technology to one of the most isolated and unpredictable regimes on Earth. And when that delivery ran into trouble, Moscow made a decision. They didn't try to save the ship. They tried to make sure no one would ever find out what was on it. But this is where the real operation begins. What happened in the 48 hours after that distress call wasn't a rescue mission. It was a coordinated military operation designed to destroy evidence in international waters. The timeline tells the story. December 22, 2024. The cargo vessel reports mechanical issues and begins to slow. The captain claims they're working on repairs. No immediate danger. No request for emergency assistance. December 24th. A Russian warship arrives at the location. Not a tugboat, not a rescue vessel, but a military ship with combat capabilities. It immediately establishes a perimeter and warns all nearby vessels to stay clear. Within hours of the warship's arrival, something strange happens. Flares are launched into the sky, not distress flares. These are high-intensity illumination rounds, the kind specifically designed to saturate infrared sensors. Why would a rescue operation need to blind satellites? The answer became clear almost immediately. Spanish maritime monitoring systems, MAOS, and designed to track underwater activity for both environmental and security purposes, detected a series of underwater explosions near the cargo ship's position. Not one. Multiple detonations, in rapid succession, and then the cargo ship sank, fast. Far faster than a typical mechanical failure would allow. Within 3 hours, when the vessel was gone, descending 8,000 feet to the ocean floor. But the warship didn't leave. For days, it remained at the exact coordinates, patrolling in tight circles. No explanation was given, no statements were made. Just a military vessel guarding a patch of empty ocean where a cargo ship used to be. Then, roughly a week later, another Russian vessel arrived. This one was different. It wasn't a warship. It was a specialized deep-sea operations ship, the kind equipped with remotely operated vehicles capable of reaching extreme depths. Investigators believe this vessel was dispatched for one of two purposes, either to recover the most sensitive components from the wreckage or to ensure they were destroyed beyond any possibility of identification. Either way, the message was clear. Russia didn't want anyone finding out what that ship was carrying. They were willing to deploy military assets, blind surveillance systems, and potentially destroy their own cargo, all to keep this secret buried. And for a while, it almost worked. What engineers discovered about the cargo, however, explains exactly why Russia was so desperate. To understand why Russia would go to such extreme lengths, you need to understand what the VM-4SG reactor actually is, and why it represents one of the most strategically valuable pieces of technology on Earth. The VM-4SG is a compact pressurized water reactor. It was developed specifically for one purpose: powering submarines. And in that role, it's remarkably effective. Most conventional submarines run on diesel-electric systems. They're loud, they're slow, and they have to surface regularly, or at least come close to the surface, to run their engines and recharge their batteries. This makes them vulnerable, detectable, limited in range and endurance. A nuclear-powered submarine is a completely different weapon. The VM-4SG produces approximately 70 to 90 megawatts of thermal energy. That's enough to drive a submarine through the water at high speeds, power all onboard systems, and sustain a crew for months without ever approaching the surface. More importantly, nuclear reactors don't need air. A diesel engine requires oxygen to burn fuel. A nuclear reactor does not. This means a nuclear submarine can remain submerged indefinitely, limited only by food supplies and crew endurance, not by fuel or mechanical constraints. This capability transforms submarines from coastal defense weapons into global strike platforms. A nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine, known as an SSBN, can carry intercontinental nuclear missiles, remain hidden beneath the ocean for months at a time, and strike targets anywhere on Earth with virtually no warning. They are considered the most survivable leg of any nation's nuclear deterrent. The engineering challenge is immense. You're taking a nuclear reactor, something that normally occupies an entire building, and shrinking it to fit inside a pressure hull less than 40 feet in diameter. The cooling systems, the shielding, the control mechanisms, everything must be miniaturized without sacrificing safety or reliability. Decades of research and billions of dollars have gone into perfecting these designs. Only a handful of nations have successfully developed submarine nuclear propulsion: the United States, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, China, and India. North Korea is not on that list. They've tried. For over 20 years, North Korea has pursued nuclear submarine technology. They have the missiles, they have the nuclear warheads. What they've never been able to master is the propulsion system, a reliable, compact nuclear reactor that can operate safely underwater for extended periods. The VM-4SG is exactly what they've been missing. If Russia successfully delivered even one working reactor, or detailed technical specifications, North Korea's timeline to building a nuclear submarine fleet wouldn't be measured in decades anymore. It could shrink to years. If this is the first you're hearing about this deal, why hit that like button. This story deserves far more attention than it's getting. And the reactor explains only half of the equation. The other half is what Russia was getting in return. This wasn't charity. Russia doesn't give away nuclear technology for free, especially not reactor designs that took decades and billions of dollars to develop. So what did North Korea offer that was valuable enough to justify this risk? The answer has been visible on battlefields across Ukraine for over a year. North Korea has sent Russia an estimated 10,000 or more soldiers. These aren't advisors or trainers. They're combat troops, deployed directly to frontline positions in some of the war's deadliest sectors. But manpower is only part of the payment. North Korea's real value to Russia is industrial. The Kim regime has maintained massive ammunition production facilities for decades, factories that were built during the Cold War and never stopped operating. While Russia's own ammunition stocks have been depleted by years of intense combat, North Korea has warehouses full of artillery shells, rockets, and small arms ammunition. Estimates suggest North Korea has shipped millions of shells to Russia since 2023. Some reports indicate the number could exceed 5 million rounds, enough to sustain offensive operations that would otherwise have stalled months ago. For Russia, this lifeline is existential. Western sanctions have crippled their ability to manufacture precision components domestically. They can't access advanced microchips. They can't import critical machine tools, to which their own defense industry is struggling to keep pace with the consumption rate of modern warfare. North Korea doesn't care about Western sanctions. They've been under maximum economic pressure for decades. They have nothing left to lose and everything to gain from a desperate Russia willing to trade its most sensitive technology. So, the deal makes sense for both sides. North Korea gets submarine reactors. Russia gets the ammunition and manpower it needs to continue fighting. But there's a deeper irony here. One rooted in geography that has haunted Russia for over a century. Look at a map. St. Petersburg, where the reactor likely originated, sits on Russia's western coast, facing Europe. Vladivostok, Russia's primary Pacific port, is on the opposite side of the country, over 10,000 kilometers away by sea. There is no direct water route between them. The Arctic Passage is frozen most of the year and requires specialized icebreakers. The only reliable option is to sail around the entire planet, through the Atlantic, around Africa, or through the Suez Canal, across the Indian Ocean, and up through the Pacific. This is the same geographic vulnerability that contributed to Russia's humiliating defeat in the Russo-Japanese War of 1905. Their Baltic fleet took 7 months to reach the Pacific, and arrived exhausted, undersupplied, and completely outmatched. 120 years later, the same geography is coming back to bite them. Russia cannot move equipment between their own ports without exposing it to international waters, satellite surveillance, and potential interception. And the shipment that sank off Spain was caught precisely because Russia had no other way to move it. But what investigators are still trying to determine is whether this was the only attempt or just the one that failed. The wreckage now sits 2,500 meters below the surface. At that depth, recovery isn't just difficult. For most nations, it's impossible. To put this in perspective, 2,500 meters is deeper than the average depth of the Mediterranean Sea. It's deeper than most military submarines can operate. It's a realm of permanent darkness, crushing pressure, and near-freezing temperatures. At 2,500 meters, the pressure exceeds 250 atmospheres. That's 250 times the pressure at sea level, enough to crush an unprotected human body instantly, and enough to implode most submersibles ever built. Hence, only a handful of vehicles on Earth can operate at this depth. Specialized remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, designed for deep-sea oil exploration or scientific research. Even fewer are equipped for salvage operations. Russia happens to operate some of these vessels. And the fact that they dispatched one to the site within days of the sinking suggests they attempted some form of recovery or destruction operation. But there's a problem even Russia can't engineer around. Nuclear reactors contain radioactive fuel. Even a reactor that was never activated, one being transported for installation, contains uranium fuel assemblies that are hazardous and strictly controlled. Disturbing this material at extreme depth carries enormous risks. So if the reactor's containment was breached, either during the sinking or during any recovery attempt, radioactive material could spread across thousands of square miles of ocean floor. The environmental implications would be severe. The diplomatic fallout would be even worse. Some analysts believe this is exactly why Russia chose to sink the ship where they did. If you're going to bury evidence, you want it somewhere no one can reach. 8,000 feet below the Atlantic in international waters, beyond the salvage capability of most nations. That's about as buried as evidence can get. Whether Russia successfully recovered sensitive components before the final sinking remains unknown. The deep-sea operations vessel they dispatched could have retrieved fuel assemblies, control systems, or classified documentation. Or it could have been sent to ensure destruction, using explosives or other means to render the wreckage unidentifiable. Either way, The physical evidence now sits at a depth where only Russia, and perhaps one or two other nations, could ever hope to examine it. But the technology transfer may have already been completed before the ship ever sank. For over 2 decades, North Korea has pursued one of the most ambitious and secretive military programs on Earth, a nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine. The logic is simple. North Korea already has nuclear warheads. They already have intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the continental United States. What they lack is survivability. Land-based missiles can be tracked. Satellite imagery can identify launch sites. In a conflict, those sites would be targeted first, potentially before North Korea could launch a retaliatory strike. But a submarine changes everything. A nuclear-powered submarine carrying ballistic missiles, an SSBN, is considered the ultimate second strike weapon. It can hide beneath the ocean for months. It can't be tracked by satellites. It can't be destroyed in a first strike. And it can launch nuclear missiles from almost anywhere in the world's oceans. This is why the United States, Russia, China, the UK, and France all maintain SSBN fleets. It's the most survivable component of their nuclear deterrence. North Korea desperately wants this capability. They've been working toward it for years. They've built diesel-electric submarines capable of launching ballistic missiles, a significant technical achievement. But these submarines are noisy, slow, and must surface regularly. They can operate in coastal waters, but they can't hide in the deep ocean for extended periods. A nuclear-powered submarine would change North Korea's strategic position entirely. Imagine a North Korean submarine carrying nuclear missiles, patrolling silently in the Pacific. It could threaten Japan, South Korea, Guam, Hawaii, potentially even the US West Coast, with virtually no warning. It would be nearly impossible to track and almost impossible to destroy preemptively. This is the nightmare scenario that defense analysts have warned about for years. The missing link has always been propulsion. Building a compact, reliable nuclear reactor for submarine use is extraordinarily difficult. It requires precision engineering, advanced metallurgy, specialized materials, and decades of operational experience. North Korea has none of these, but Russia does. If Russia has provided North Korea with a working VM-4SG reactor, or even detailed technical specifications and manufacturing guidance, the timeline for a North Korean nuclear submarine fleet could accelerate dramatically. What might have taken 20 more years of independent development could potentially be achieved in 5 to 10 years with Russian assistance. The reactor sitting at the bottom of the Atlantic may represent a failed delivery, but the question that keeps intelligence agencies awake at night is simple. Was this the first attempt, or just the one that got caught? This is the kind of story that doesn't get enough coverage. If you want more deep dives into the technology and engineering shaping global security, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Because the nuclear reactor isn't just a story about technology transfer, it's a window into how desperate Russia has become. Step back and look at what just happened. Russia, a nation that once led the world in nuclear technology, that built the first nuclear power plant, that pioneered submarine reactor design, is now trading its most sensitive military secrets just to keep its war machine running. They're paying for North Korean artillery shells with submarine reactors. This is a stunning reversal. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union gave North Korea its nuclear program. Soviet scientists helped build North Korea's first research reactors. Soviet technology formed the foundation of everything North Korea has achieved in nuclear weapons development. Look now, the relationship has flipped. Russia is the one in desperate need. North Korea is the one with leverage, and the price Russia is paying isn't just ammunition, it's the strategic advantage they spent decades building. Nuclear submarine technology was one of Russia's crown jewels. The ability to build compact, reliable reactors for underwater propulsion gave Russia power projection capabilities that few nations could match. It was a source of national pride, a cornerstone of their military deterrent. Now they're giving it away. Not to an ally, but to an unpredictable regime that has threatened nuclear war multiple times in the past decade. This is what desperation looks like. Western sanctions have crippled Russia's ability to function as a modern industrial economy. They can't access advanced semiconductors. So they can't import precision machine tools. They can't manufacture the components their own weapon systems require. Their solution has been to turn to nations outside the Western financial system, China, Iran, North Korea, for the supplies they need. But those nations don't accept rubles, and Russia's foreign currency reserves have been frozen or depleted. So they're paying in technology, in expertise, in the kind of strategic assets that take generations to develop. Meanwhile, the human cost continues to mount. According to BBC analysis, Russia lost 40% more soldiers in 2025 than in any previous year of the war. The news organization confirmed approximately 160,000 names of dead Russian soldiers, verified through obituaries, cemetery records, and public documentation. The real number is almost certainly higher. If a Russian military practice involves listing casualties as missing rather than killed, Ndabadin Finkti, a bureaucratic trick that allows the government to avoid paying death benefits to families. And while Russian soldiers die at record rates, Vladimir Putin is building a new palace. Investigative journalists from the Navalny Anti-Corruption Foundation recently exposed a $130 million compound under construction in occupied Crimea. The main residence spans approximately 100,000 square feet. The guest house adds another 55,000 square feet. The complex includes private piers, artificial beaches, a spa with swimming pools and cryo chambers, a cinema, wine cellars, and billiard rooms. This is what the war is funding. But perhaps nothing captures the disconnect between Russian leadership and Russian reality better than what happened just days ago. On December 28th, Russian authorities made a dramatic announcement. Ukraine had launched a massive drone attack targeting President Putin's personal residence. 91 drones, a coordinated assassination attempt. The Russian military heroically intercepted every single one. It was exactly the kind of story designed to rally domestic support and justify escalation. There was just one problem. The evidence didn't hold up. Russia released a map showing the positions of all 91 intercepted drones. According to this map, some of the drones were located hundreds of miles from Putin's residence at the time they were supposedly shot down. If Russian air defense knew these drones were targeting Putin's home from hundreds of miles away, that would represent an almost supernatural level of predictive capability. The kind of capability that, notably, hasn't prevented Ukrainian drones from striking Russian oil refineries, power stations, and military bases throughout the war. But the map wasn't the most embarrassing part. Russian authorities also released video footage of what they claimed was a captured Ukrainian drone. The footage showed a small aircraft carrying approximately 6 kilograms of explosives, supposedly proof of the assassination attempt. Military analysts examined the footage. Within hours, they identified the drone. It wasn't Ukrainian. It was a Russian Guran drone, a domestically produced model size that had been painted black. Even more damning, the battery and cellular modem components visible in the footage came from manufacturers that work exclusively with the Russian military. They don't export, and they don't sell to Ukraine. Their products are found only in Russian systems. If we take the Russian evidence at face value, if we assume there really was a drone attack on Putin's residence, then that evidence actually suggests the attack came from inside Russia, not from Ukraine. Whether this represents genuine internal dissent, a false flag operation gone wrong, or simply incompetent propaganda is unclear. But the implications are significant either way. Russia is either facing internal threats serious enough to target the president directly, or the government is fabricating attacks to justify crackdowns and maintain public fear. Neither interpretation reflects a regime operating from a position of strength. The reactor sits 8,000 feet below the Atlantic. The ship that carried it will likely never be recovered. The evidence of what Russia tried to do, and almost succeeded in doing, is buried deeper than almost any technology on Earth can reach. But the secret is out. Russia has crossed a line that many analysts thought was still years away. They're not just accepting help from North Korea. They're actively transferring nuclear submarine technology to one of the most volatile regimes on the planet. The implications extend far beyond this single failed shipment. If North Korea successfully operationalizes this technology, if they build even one nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine, the strategic balance in the Pacific changes fundamentally. Japan, South Korea, and the United States would face a new category of threat, a nuclear-armed submarine that can't be tracked, can't be preemptively destroyed, and can strike with virtually no warning. That's not a theoretical concern. That's a potential reality within the next decade. And this transfer happened because Russia is collapsing under the weight of its own decisions. Sanctions have cut them off from the global economy. Their military is bleeding soldiers at unprecedented rates. Their industrial base can't keep pace with the demands of sustained warfare. So they're trading their future for ammunition today, selling their technological crown jewels to keep the war machine running another month, another year. Putin builds palaces while his soldiers sign contracts they can never escape, trapped by laws that extend their service until a war ends that their leader has no intention of finishing. The reactor at the bottom of the Atlantic isn't just evidence of a covert arms deal. 1. It's a symbol of how far Russia has fallen and how high the stakes have risen for everyone else. The question that remains unanswered is the one that should concern us most. How many other shipments made it through? What else has Russia already traded away? And what happens when North Korea finally has everything it needs? The next decade will provide the answers. The technology is in motion, the deals have been made, and somewhere in the Pacific, engineers may already be working to build something that changes everything. If you want more stories about the technologies, engineering projects, and hidden developments shaping our world, subscribe to Next Blueprint, hit that like button, and let us know in the comments what you think happens next. Does this technology transfer succeed? Does it change the balance of power in the Pacific? Or does it all fall apart? Drop your predictions below, and I'll see you in the next one.